kind of availability of home computers and terminals of some kind that we had with television sets by, say, the late 1950s. In other words, the middle class homeowner in America will have some kind of home computer or home terminal.
Do you foresee a time when most people in Madison will have computers in their homes?
Oh, sure.
Well, I've heard that in the future, a computer like this would be as normal as a color TV is now.
So you want to get one?
Yes.
But asking, in effect, what you can do with a computer is like asking what you can do with an internal combustion engine. And I think it's a useful analogy. If you imagine for a moment that we didn't have any internal combustion engines, and some one fellow had invented it and was trying to explain to other people why it was a good thing and what they could do with it, you see. And everybody'd say, well, I understand. I mean, the pistons go up and down, and it creates this energy, but what can you do with it? I mean, what can you do with an internal combustion engine? And then somebody would discover that you could hook one up to a wagon, and you could use it to move the wagon, and everybody, oh, now I understand. The internal combustion engine is used for an automobile. It's used in place of a horse on the automobile. And a fellow would say, well, no, not quite, because you can do other things with it. And then you'd hear about some fellow who'd figured out a way to hook one up to a lawnmower. And they'd say, oh, now I understand. It's used to move cars, and it's also used to cut the grass. And then along comes somebody and says, but look, I figured out a way to hook it up to a boat. But it goes on forever, and it can be in great big tractors, and it can be in little tiny airplanes, model airplanes. You can use an internal combustion engine to generate electricity, you see. But the computer is very much in that position now. It will be the equivalent in terms of its impact on our society of what the internal combustion engine and the automobile were. It will be the equivalent in terms of social impact of what the television industry and television set was during the 1960s and 1970s. And you can use a computer essentially for whatever it is you want to do.
Before you watch the rest of this program, ask yourself these simple questions. When face to face with a computer, do your eyes start to glaze over? Are you sure the machine is about to explode? You push any buttons? Are you convinced that computers can only be used by mathematical and electronic wizards who go through life on an intellectual plane high above your own? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this program is for you. The development of miniaturized circuitry has revolutionized the computer industry. 20 years ago, a computer that cost $1 million and filled an entire room had less capability than an 11-pound desktop computer today. With costs going down and capabilities going up, the computer has entered our lives quickly and unobtrusively. We're all familiar by now with computers in the business world. We see them every day at the bank, in the supermarket, in travel agencies and airports. We're probably less aware of the computerized circuits in our homes. Chances are there are computers in your home that you don't even know about. Computers that allow you to program your microwave oven, TV, radio, or video cassette recorder. With these machines already in place, can the true home computer be far behind? The fact is, it's already here. The technology is now available, the prices are affordable, and more Madisonians are buying computers for their homes and using them as part of their daily routine. We decided to talk to some of these computer users, who, by the way, are not all mathematical geniuses. We asked them why they have computers in their homes and what in the world they do with them. We found an amazing group of people consumed by what can only be called terminal madness.
I'm using a program which I developed part of, which keeps track of all my expenses, which I enter every time I pay my bills, and keep them sorted in terms of the categories so that I can go back and find out where I spent the money, why I spent the money, who did I spend the money with, where the income came from, and so on. This helps me because when income tax time comes, it takes me about 30 minutes rather than a week, and it's fun rather than a chore.
We have programs that allow you to build a database of anything that you wish. For example, it could be as simple as names and addresses, it could be phone numbers, it could be personal possessions, loan records, anything that you would make a list for.
We keep all the songs that the band has on the list on the computer because they're changed according to different places we play. Sometimes you need songs from the 50s or from the 60s, and so the computer generates lists fit for certain places to play according to what goes over there.
So I don't have a typewriter. I use my computer to do my writing.
What's the advantage of using your computer instead of a typewriter?
Instant corrections. If you make a mistake, you don't have to back up, erase it, or anything like that.
By now, I was beginning to wonder if all computer users were adult men. Boy, was I in for a surprise.
This is an aircraft flight logbook that Martha is adding up. She's taking the total flying time and all its derivatives, how much daytime, how much nighttime, how much on instruments, and so on, and adding all the hours flown during the recent month that are on the page and coming up with new totals. The FAA requires that such a logbook be kept, and with the aid of the computer, Martha, since she's been 6 years old, has been able to keep it accurately for the FAA.
Has the computer made your life easier?
Easier? Probably not easier. I've noticed all through my life, I invent things. And I invent things to make things easier. And I work very much harder doing it. It's hard to sort that out. No, it hasn't made it easier. It's made it more fun.
Would you ever go back to keeping records in the more conventional way?
Never.
I honestly believe that just about everyone will have a computer or a computer terminal of some kind in their home. We're going to see these units interconnected through telephone networks. In fact, we have that now, where they can dial up large databases across the country and retrieve information, ask questions, get some answers.
The real value, and over a long term, I think the thing that will determine its use as a communication medium is that it gives the person right in their home, like me at this moment, in front of this keyboard on this, what some people consider a toy, access to any piece of information in the world. Now that sounds like an exaggeration, but it really isn't.
Right now I'm suffering from future shock because of something I've about. There's a service called a source, which is a time-sharing service that is for a fairly small one-time fee. One is able to tie into a national database.
Well, anyone who's willing to pay for it can get access to any database that exists. There's a Lockheed dialogue system, for example, that has 125, 150 databases. They would have congressional testimony, they would have Census Bureau statistics, they would have access to all scientific literature, that sort of thing. At a very much cheaper rate, there is something called the Source, which operates out of Washington, D.C. area. But again, with this telephone and an alternative telephone company called Telenet, which exists for computers to talk to each other, you can, from Madison, a local Madison phone call, contact the Source in Washington. And what you there get is a tremendous array of consumer services. And the price now, instead of being $90 an hour, is $2.75 an hour, which is, after all, cheaper than you can make the phone call. And you get access to all this information. You can get into the UPI, Newswire. They also have access to all kinds of consumer services. They just put on some tax services. I found out when I signed on that people are using now during tax time. And consumer shopping services, and you can get airline tickets or theater tickets, that sort of thing. They also have an electronic mail system so that people who are on the source can send messages to each other. This is not something for 1990, this is something for 1980, right here in Madison if you want it.
In a few years, nearly everyone will have a computer. They'll be running every appliance in the home. There'll be central control units that will control your furnace, various appliances. You'll be able to communicate with your neighbors through them. You'll be able to buy your groceries with your computer and take care of all your home financing, etc.
I found that a little hard to swallow until I saw it with my own eyes. Without changing any existing wiring, some computer hobbyists have achieved remote control for under $100.
Basically, I have a simple program set up right now which uses a clock scheduling system. The computer has a programmable clock which can keep precise time to within a 10,000th of a second. It's programmed to follow a strict timetable for various periods of the day. We have a new baby in our home. She's about 5 weeks old now, and she still gets up during the night for feedings. And the computer is programmed to turn on the lights in our room at 2 a.m. in the morning for her night feeding. It also turns on the light in her room, dim, and it can turn on a little music box, electrical music box, to soothe the baby at that time in the morning. It's also programmed to turn on an electric bottle warmer so that the bottle warmer is all ready to go by the time we finally get up at that hour of the morning.
Weather for this morning from Madison and McFarland. Sunny this morning, partly cloudy later this afternoon.
The computer can wake you up in the morning by turning on a radio in your room or turning the lights on in your room. It's already started the coffee pot in your kitchen so that your coffee is warm. It's turned on the radio or the television set so that you can be listening to the news as you get up in the morning.
I asked George what kind of computer could do all this, but he preferred to have the computer speak for itself.
Hello, I'm a chronomical Z2 computer.
I began to think that computers had minds of their own, until I found one that really knew how to take orders.
Yes. No. Speak. Fire. I've just programmed it to accept voice commands and make the robot that's on the screen do whatever I tell it to with whatever programmed words that I have in the program. Anywhere where you have AC power, the computer can turn anything on and off in the house that there is to turn on and off. On, off.
What kind of things can you learn by having a computer at home?
Well, you can put math programs on. You can put really anything you want on it, but you got to know how to do it.
Is it more fun than school?
Much.
What do you do with your computer?
Right now I've got it set up to do geometry homework, I've programmed in the equations for the problems, and the computer will ask me, what kind of a problem I'm going to be working with, and then I enter the problem and what information I have, and then it'll come back with the answer.
Now, suppose you're in the classroom and you have to take a test and your computer isn't there. Can you still do the problem?
Yeah. The computer just adds more fun to it, really, and it exercises your mind more to do the program and put it in and know you've done it.
It wasn't easy, but I found one because I'm studying French, and together we designed a program that would be the equivalent of a French flashcard. And one of the bonuses of putting it on the computer is that this program was totally random. It pulls the words out of the file in a random manner, and it corrects me whether I've gotten it right or wrong. It keeps score, and then at the end, it reviews over the ones that I had done incorrectly to begin with.
When it's in a home, generally everyone uses it.
I've got a 2.5-year-old girl, and right now she's just to the point where she likes hitting a key and it draws a big letter on the screen, and she has her favorite keys now that she uses.
We've got educational programs for youngsters. We've got educational programs for adults as well. We have a series of math programs that are available, spelling programs, literature programs, reading comprehension programs, and virtually at every level.
That most computer users share. Games. Most people won't admit they bought a computer to play games, but play they do for hours on end. What's all the fuss about? Watch.
The little girls usually, about dinner time, say, "Alan, can we play on the computer with you tonight?" And very often the answer is yes, and we sit down and we'll try new games. We have on the disc literally hundreds of games, and we're always trading with friends so that the number of games coming in is always more than the number that we can play. So we really have an adventure doing that together.
What would you rather do, play with the computer or watch TV?
For sure, play with the computer, yeah. I mean, you know, it's a lot more fun. It's like having someone to talk to.
I've heard, you know, they say that when they introduced computers in Sweden that people just went crazy because the Swedes are a very introspective nation, and so they're all like really getting to their computers and not interrelating anymore. And I sort of think that might happen to some people if they get really involved with the computer, because it's so easy to almost anthropomorphize the computer. I mean, I've seen people interrelate with their computers and they just sort of talk to them. It's like it's a person or something. I'm hoping that what computers will do is, instead of being a replacement for human interaction, they will free a person up so that they will be able to get their work done and improve their professional lives enough so they'll have more time to interrelate with the people around them rather than just getting completely lost in their computer.
Computers are coming down in price now. We are selling systems that are starting at around $550 now. So it's becoming at least fairly affordable kind of thing.
I think where we are now is just a brief moment in a time of pretty rapid change. 5 years ago, to get a system that will do all this one will, and this one will run a small to reasonable sized business and do many other things, might have cost, in the $100,000 range and filled up a big chunk of this room. And certainly not been in the price range of a small business, much less an individual like myself. Today it's a system that costs a few dollars. You can buy it for certainly a fraction of what you'd buy a car for, even a small car, and it doesn't take any gasoline.
One of the toughest questions, I think, that we confront as just sort of average middle-class folks in society who are potentially in the market to buy something in the way of a computer is, how do we do it? You know, when do we get into the market? When's the best time to enter? What is the best equipment to buy? Why are we doing this? So forth. There is no consumer reports of computers. There are comparative studies that have been done. And so what most of us end up doing is going around and talking to the local computer stores, the Radio Shack and the ones that sell the Apples and the others, and sort of talking to sales personnel about it. And it's hard to find anybody who's been selling the stuff for more than a year or two, because that's as long as it's existed. So many people are saying, well, I'm going to wait. You know, the prices will come down, it'll get cheaper, it'll get better. But I'm not sure that's the wisest policy as a consumer. I think maybe the most sensible thing to do is to get in early with a cheap system so that you don't have a lot of money committed to it. But to get in so your kids can have some exposure to it and play around with it, learn a little bit about programming in the basic language, learn something about what computers can do. And if 6 months or a year later you want to sell it as a used commodity, maybe the experience costs you $100, $200. But meanwhile, this industry is moving so fast. I mean, we talk about what's available, you know, by the early part of 1980, but then by spring we'll have this, and if you can wait till summer we'll have this developed, and by next fall we'll have this. Every week there are new innovations, new things coming out, so that when you wait in time, you're simply entering the technology at a much later stage, and you've got a lot more catching up to do. I don't think you can ignore the computer any more than you can ignore the automobile, ignore the telephone, ignore the television. It is going to be in our lives in the 1980s and the 1990s the equivalent of what those technologies were earlier in this century. The quicker you get in on the ground floor of it and understand it and make it a part of your daily life, the better off you're going to be.